A knife moving at 20 miles per hour versus a bullet traveling at 1,500 miles per hour. Common sense says the bullet wins every time, right? Wrong. In the lethal chess game of close-quarters combat, a blade wielded by a master can be more terrifying than any firearm. This isn't Hollywood fantasy or martial arts mythology. This is the reality that special forces operatives, law enforcement agencies, and combat veterans around the world have learned the hard way. The Filipino martial art of Cali holds secrets that challenge everything we think we know about modern warfare. What makes a centuries-old blade system more dangerous than contemporary firearms? The answer will change how you see combat forever. Marcus Chin never believed in the old ways until the night everything changed in that Manila warehouse. The former Marine had spent 8 years in combat zones, his rifle an extension of his body, his sidearm a trusted companion through countless firefights. He'd seen action in Fallujah, Kandahar, and a dozen other places that haunted his dreams. Now working private security for a multinational corporation, Marcus considered himself the epitome of modern tactical training. His team relied on the latest equipment, advanced firearms training, and cutting-edge combat techniques. Traditional martial arts seemed quaint to him, relics of a bygone era, with no place in contemporary warfare. That arrogance would nearly cost him everything. The assignment seemed straightforward enough. Marcus and his four-man team were tasked with retrieving stolen proprietary technology from a warehouse in Manila's Port District. Intelligence suggested minimal resistance, maybe 2 or 3 low-level thieves who'd grab corporate secrets to sell on the black market. The team arrived at midnight, fully armed with suppressed carbines, night vision equipment, and tactical body armor. They moved through the darkness like ghosts, their training evident in every calculated step. The warehouse loomed before them, a decrepit structure of corrugated metal and concrete that had seen better decades. Marcus felt the familiar pre-operation tension, that electric anticipation that came before potential violence. Everything seemed under control. They breached the entrance with practiced efficiency, Marcus taking point as his team fanned out in textbook formation. The warehouse interior stretched into shadows, illuminated only by moonlight filtering through broken windows high above. Shipping containers created a maze of corridors and blind corners. Their night vision turned the world into shades of green, revealing stacked crates and abandoned equipment. Then Marcus saw him standing in the center of the main floor, seemingly waiting. A solitary figure, slight in build, probably mid-50s, wearing simple dark clothing. The man held no visible weapon. His hands relaxed at his sides. Marcus raised his rifle, red dot sight centered on the target's chest. This would be over in seconds. The man's name was Tatong Ramos, though Marcus wouldn't learn this until much later. What happened next defied everything Marcus understood about combat engagement distances and threat assessment. As Marcus's finger began applying pressure to the trigger, Tatong moved. Not with the panicked scramble of an amateur or the desperate dive of someone outgunned, but with a fluidity that seemed to bend the laws of physics. In the span of a single heartbeat, Tatong covered 15 feet, his hands suddenly filled with 2 black sticks that materialized from somewhere in his clothing. The angle of his approach eliminated Marcus's firing lane, forcing him to adjust his aim. Before he could reacquire his target, Tatong was inside his weapon's effective range. The first strike hit Marcus's rifle with shocking force, redirecting the barrel skyward. The second stick slammed into his forearm with surgical precision, causing his grip to loosen involuntarily. Marcus tried to step back, to create distance, but Tatong flowed with him like a shadow. The sticks became a blur, striking pressure points, joints, and nerve clusters with devastating accuracy. Within 3 seconds, Marcus's rifle clattered to the concrete floor. Within 5 seconds, he was on his knees, arms temporarily useless from nerve strikes he didn't even see coming. The entire engagement had taken less time than it takes to exhale. Behind him, his team raised their weapons, but Tatong had already disappeared into the shadows between shipping containers. What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare that would be studied later by everyone involved. Marcus's team, for highly trained operators with modern firearms, pursued a single man armed with sticks and knives through the warehouse labyrinth. They had every advantage: numbers, firepower, body armor, night vision, and communication equipment. Tatong had only his weapons and a lifetime of training in Filipino Kali. For the next 20 minutes, the warehouse became a hunting ground where the hunters became the hunted. Team members called out contacts only to find empty air when others arrived. Footsteps echoed from multiple directions simultaneously. Shadows moved with impossible speed. One by one, Marcus heard his teammates cry out, weapons clattering, bodies hitting the ground. Marcus recovered enough to retrieve his rifle and rejoin the fight, his arms tingling with returning sensation. He found Rodriguez first, the team's breacher, sitting against a container holding his dislocated shoulder. His rifle lay 10 feet away, the charging handle bent at an impossible angle. Rodriguez's eyes were wide with shock. He was just there, then he wasn't, Rodriguez muttered. Move like water, boss. Hit me with something. Felt like getting tossed. Then my shoulder popped. Never even saw the blade. Marcus helped him to his feet, and they moved cautiously toward where they'd last heard from Jackson and Wu. The warehouse had become alien territory. Every shadow potentially lethal. Every sound possibly a trap. They found Jackson conscious but defeated, his tactical vest slashed in 4 places. The Kevlar cut clean through by something incredibly sharp. Minor cuts on his arms bled steadily. None life-threatening, but all strategically placed to limit his combat effectiveness. His carbine sling had been severed, the weapon's optical sight shattered. He came out of nowhere, Jackson reported, his voice shaking. I fired 6 rounds, swear I had him dead to rights. Missed every single shot. Then he was inside my range, and these knives just appeared. Moved so fast I couldn't track them. Felt like fighting a hurricane with a baseball bat. Wu was nearby, sitting with his back to a crate, holding his ribs, his weapon completely disassembled and scattered across the floor. Marcus realized they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. This wasn't some lucky thief who'd gotten a few good hits in. This was a master practitioner of a fighting system designed specifically to defeat armed opponents. Filipino Kali, Marcus would later learn, evolved in an archipelago where tribal warfare and pirate raids were constant threats. The art developed during Spanish colonization, when possession of bladed weapons was outlawed, forcing practitioners to become creative and devastatingly efficient. Kali wasn't about sport or performance. It was pure combat efficiency, designed to neutralize threats quickly using whatever weapons were available. Sticks, knives, machetes, improvised weapons, empty hands. All were integrated into a seamless system. Tatong represented centuries of refined lethality. Marcus made the tactical decision to extract his team and regroup. They'd been outclassed, and pride wasn't worth lives. But Tatong had other plans. As they moved toward the exit, he appeared again, this time in full light from a security lamp they'd activated. Marcus finally saw the weapons clearly. 2 rattan sticks, scarred from years of training, move into Tong's hands with hypnotic rhythm. At his waist hung 2 karambit knives, their curved blades designed to hook and cut with devastating efficiency. Tong's stance was relaxed but coiled, like a spring waiting to release. His eyes held no anger, no fear, just calm assessment. He spoke for the first time, his English accented but clear. You carry guns like they make you invincible. You forgot the most important weapon. Marcus kept his rifle trained on Tatong, maintaining distance. And what's that? He asked, genuinely curious despite the situation. Tatong smiled slightly. Understanding. Your weapons are tools. My weapons are extensions of my body and mind. Your bullets travel fast, but they travel in straight lines. My blades flow like water, finding gaps you don't know exist. At this distance, before your finger completes its trigger pull, I can strike you 4 times. Your armor protects your torso. What about your hands? Your arms? Your neck? Your eyes? As if to demonstrate, Tatong's hand moved in a blur, and something flew past Marcus's head, thunking into a wooden crate behind him. A throwing knife, embedded to its hilt. Marcus hadn't even seen the throw. The standoff lasted several heartbeats. Marcus understood something profound in that moment. The gun in his hands, for all its technological sophistication, was just a tool. It had limitations. Effective range required distance. Firing required time, however minimal, to aim and pull the trigger. In close quarters, against someone with Tatang's skill, those milliseconds were eternities. A blade never ran out of ammunition. A blade never jammed. A blade worked in silence. And in the hands of a true master, a blade could flow through the fences that firearms couldn't penetrate. Marcus had been trained to maintain distance, to use his weapon's range advantage. But what happened when distance couldn't be maintained? What happened when the enemy closed a gap before you could react? Tatang lowered his sticks slightly, a gesture of de-escalation. "You come for technology that doesn't belong to your company," he said. "It was stolen from my family's research first. I'm taking back what's mine." Marcus processed this new information. This wasn't a simple theft, after all. The intelligence had been incomplete, perhaps deliberately so. His employer had sent him after something with a complicated history, and Tatang was the rightful owner defending his property. Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible an hour earlier. He lowered his rifle. "Show me," he said. Tatang nodded slowly, recognizing a warrior's honor when he saw it. What followed was an education that would change Marcus's entire approach to combat and personal defense. Over the next hour, Tatang explained while demonstrating with movements too fast to fully follow. Kali operated on principles that most modern combat training ignored. The art understood that in real fights, especially against multiple opponents or in confined spaces, range collapsed instantly. When someone attacked you with intent to kill, they didn't stand at 20 feet and wait. They closed distance, they grabbed, they overwhelmed. In those moments, the long barrel of a rifle became a liability. The bulk of a holstered pistol meant precious seconds wasted in the draw. But a knife on your belt, a stick in your hand, these were always ready, always accessible, always effective. Tatang moved through forms, his sticks blurring in patterns called sinawali, creating defensive shields and offensive strikes simultaneously. The most shocking demonstration came when Tatang invited Marcus to attack him with a training knife, while Tatang used only his hands. Marcus, still a trained combatant despite his recent humbling, attacked with commitment. Tatang's empty hand techniques, called pangamit, redirected the blade with minimal contact, using Marcus's own momentum against him. Within seconds, Marcus found himself disarmed, his own training knife at his throat, held by Tatang who'd somehow gotten behind him. "In Cali, we train with weapons first," Tatang explained, returning the knife. This seems backward to most martial arts. But when you understand weapons, you understand lines of attack, timing, and distance. Then when you fight empty-handed, you see your opponent's body as weapons. Their hands, elbows, knees, feet, all become blades that must be respected and controlled. Tatang showed Marcus' economy of motion that made Kali so effective. Western boxing and even military combatives often involve large, winding movements. Kali strikes came from tight, compact angles, often no more than a few inches of movement generating devastating force. The triangular footwork allowed practitioners to move offline, while simultaneously closing distance and creating angles for attack. Everything connected. A slash with a knife naturally flowed into a strike with the opposite hand stick, which transitioned into an elbow, which set up a sweep. There were no pauses, no reset positions. Combat was continuous flow from one technique to the next. Against such a system, the average person with a gun, even trained personnel, were vulnerable the moment distance collapsed. Marcus asked a question that had been burning in his mind. Why isn't this more widely known? Why doesn't everyone train in this? Tatang's answer was sobering. Because it requires years of dedicated practice. Your military spends weeks teaching soldiers to shoot, maybe some hand-to-hand basics. Kali takes a lifetime to master. Also, in your culture, guns are easy. Pull a trigger, threat goes away. People don't want to accept that guns have limitations. They don't want to train for the reality that most violence happens fast, close, and chaotic. In my country, we understand Filipinos have been fighting invaders for centuries. Japanese, Spanish, Americans, all came with superior weapons. We learned to survive by being better, faster, smarter in close combat. Our blades carried our independence when bullets couldn't. The historical context fascinated Marcus. During World War II, Filipino guerrillas armed primarily with bolos and machetes had terrorized Japanese occupation forces. In the jungles and villages where combat happened at arm's length, traditional Kali gave Filipino fighters a decisive advantage over soldiers with rifles and bayonets. The Japanese learned to fear encounters in dense vegetation, where their firearms became unwieldy clubs and Filipino blades ruled supreme. Even in modern times, Philippine Special Forces units maintain Kali training as a core component of their combatives program. They understood what Marcus was learning tonight. In the critical moment when survival hung in the balance, skill with the blade could mean the difference between life and death, even in an age of advanced firearms. Tatong demonstrated defanging the snake, a core Kali concept. Rather than trying to overpower an armed opponent directly, strike the limb holding the weapon. Destroy the hand, the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder. Without a functional weapon arm, even the strongest opponent became neutralized. Against a gun, this meant attacking the hands before the trigger could be pulled. Against a knife, it meant destroying the gripping hand. The concept seemed simple, but the execution required phenomenal speed, timing, and precision. Tatong moved through scenarios, showing how Karambit's curved blade could hook behind a wrist or elbow, pulling while cutting, creating devastating injuries that ended fights instantly. The brutality was undeniable, but so was the effectiveness. This was combat stripped of pretense, pure and lethal. Marcus watched as Tatong worked with his two sticks in a pattern called Heaven 6, creating a continuous flow of strikes that covered all possible angles of attack. High, low, diagonal, horizontal. Every approach was addressed. The sound of the sticks cutting through air created a rhythmic whistle. With firearms, you think in terms of sight picture, trigger control, recoil management. Tatong explained. All important skills. But you forget that in real encounters, you rarely have time for perfect sight alignment. You point shoot at best. Your muscle memory takes over. Same with blades, but the blade is more forgiving. A bullet misses by an inch, it misses completely. A blade deflects by an inch, it still cuts. The margin for error is smaller, making blades more reliable in chaos. The conversation turned to something even more unsettling, the psychological impact of blade combat. Marcus had seen combat trauma, had experienced it himself. But Tatong explained that there was something primal and terrifying about edged weapons that firearms didn't replicate. A gunshot wound, while potentially fatal, was often quick and at distance. The victim might not even see the shooter. But a knife attack was personal, intimate, visceral. The attacker was close enough to smell, to hear breathing. The wounds from blades were visible, immediate, and carried psychological weight that bullets sometimes lacked. Even trained soldiers often froze when faced with committed blade attack, their training momentarily forgotten in the face of such primal threat. Kali practitioners knew this and used it as another weapon. Marcus's team had regrouped and stood watching the impromptu lesson, their previous certainty shaken. They'd trained hundreds of hours with their firearms, learning to clear malfunctions, shoot on the move, engage multiple targets. All valuable skills. But in 20 minutes, a man with sticks and knives had systematically defeated them without sustaining a scratch. The lesson was clear and humbling. Tatong addressed them all. I don't say this to diminish your skills or your weapons. Your rifles and pistols are excellent tools with important roles in combat, but they are not magic talismans. At close range, against a skilled opponent, you are vulnerable. This is why the greatest warriors train in all ranges, long, medium, and close. You cannot always control the distance of a fight. Tatong showed them the range equation that governed all combat. Long range belonged to firearms, particularly rifles. Medium range could go either way depending on skill and circumstance. But close range within arm's reach belonged to blades and empty hands. The problem was that most real-world violence occurred at close range. Ambushes, home invasions, sudden assaults, these happen within touching distance. Statistics show that the average gunfight occurred at less than 7 feet, often in poor lighting, with both parties in motion. At that distance, drawing a holstered pistol took longer than closing the gap with a knife. The infamous 21-foot rule in law enforcement demonstrated this reality. A person with a knife could reach and stab an officer before the officer could draw and fire their sidearm. Marcus began to understand the broader implications. Modern society's reliance on firearms had created a false sense of security and a skill set gap. People assumed that carrying a gun made them safe, that they could handle threats from any distance. But if they couldn't deploy that firearm fast enough, or if it malfunctioned, or if the threat came from an unexpected angle, what then? Kali taught total weapons integration. A practitioner could fight with sticks, knives, swords, improvised weapons, or empty hands with equal efficiency, because the underlying principles remain constant. This versatility was the true advantage. A gun was powerful, but specialized. Kali was adaptable and omnipresent. Every object became a potential weapon, every movement a potential defense. The training session continued as Tatong demonstrated disarms against firearms. Using training weapons, he showed how proper footwork and hand positioning could redirect a gun barrel while simultaneously controlling the opponent's structure. He moved offline, creating angles where the gun couldn't track fast enough. He attacked the hands, the arms, the weapon itself. In slow motion, Marcus could follow the techniques. At full speed, they seemed impossible, almost supernatural. But they weren't supernatural. They were simply the product of countless hours of practice, of understanding leverage and anatomy, of training reactions until they became instinctive. Tatong made it clear that these techniques were high risk and required extensive training to execute safely. But their mere existence challenged the assumption that guns were unbeatable. As dawn began breaking through the warehouse windows, Marcus felt like a different person than the one who'd entered hours before. His worldview had been thoroughly dismantled and reconstructed. He'd spent his adult life in military service, learning one approach to combat. Tonight, he'd encountered a completely different philosophy that was equally valid and in many ways more comprehensive. Tatong had opened a door to understanding that transcended individual techniques. It wasn't about whether guns or blades were better. It was about understanding the limitations and advantages of all tools and developing the wisdom to know which tools served which moment. True mastery meant being dangerous at all ranges, with all weapons, adapting to whatever situation arose. The situation with the stolen technology was resolved peacefully. Tatong agreed to share the research with Marcus's company under proper licensing agreements, ensuring his family received credit and compensation. Marcus's team left the warehouse without the prize they'd come for, but with something more valuable, a harsh lesson in humility and a glimpse of a martial tradition that had been honed over centuries. In his report to the company, Marcus detailed the encounter honestly, recommending that the security team receive training in close-quarters combat and blade defense. He left out many details, particularly the extent of their defeat, but emphasized that their training had dangerous gaps that needed addressing. Some traditions, he noted, survived for good reasons. In the weeks that followed, Marcus sought out a Cali instructor in his home city. The first class was brutally humbling. He, who had been through Marine Corps training, combat tours, and advanced tactical courses, found himself struggling with basic coordination drills. His hands tangled in the patterns. His footwork felt clumsy. The light rattan sticks left welts on his forearms when he failed to properly defend. But he persisted. Slowly, over months of training, Marcus began to understand the sophistication of the system, the way it trained both sides of the body equally, creating ambidextrous fighters, the way it built attributes, speed, coordination, timing, sensitivity, rather than just teaching techniques, the way everything connected in a unified whole. He began incorporating blade awareness into his firearms training, understanding how to transition between weapons seamlessly. Marcus eventually returned to Manila and sought out Tatong Ramos. The older man welcomed him and agreed to provide additional instruction. Over several years, Marcus became proficient in Cali, though he knew he'd never reach Tatong's level of mastery. He didn't need to. What he gained was far more valuable than individual techniques. He developed a complete understanding of violence and combat that incorporated all tools in all ranges. He became a more dangerous and effective operator, not despite learning about blades, but because of it. His firearm skills improved because he understood their limitations. His empty hand skills improved because he saw his body as a collection of weapons. His tactical thinking expanded to consider scenarios his previous training had never addressed. Tatom became a mentor and eventually a friend. Years later, when asked by younger operators about that night in the Manila warehouse, Marcus would smile and share the core lesson. Weapons are tools, each with strengths and weaknesses. A bullet travels faster than a blade, but speed isn't everything. A blade is always loaded, never jams, works in silence, and in skilled hands can be deployed faster than a gun in close quarters. More importantly, the warrior makes the weapon effective, not the other way around. Relying solely on technology, without understanding fundamental combative principles, creates dangerous gaps. The old ways survive because they work. Filipino Kali is a museum piece or cultural curiosity. It's a living, breathing combat system, refined through generations of actual warfare. In the modern world's rush to embrace firearms as the ultimate answer to violence, we've forgotten that the most dangerous weapon has always been the trained human mind. Everything else is just extension of that truth.